Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The government is proposing a new Urban Renewal Act, which will allow authorities to push forward redevelopment projects even without unanimous agreement from property owners. But the proposal has sparked heated debate in Parliament and beyond. Critics argue that forced acquisitions and critics argue that the bill could lead to forced acquisitions and displace certain communities. Supporters, on the other hand, insist that the current system, where one holdout can block an entire project, is just unsustainable. So how do we think about this? The Urban Renewal Act, is it a necessary reform? Joining me on the line today to discuss this further is Dr Shuhana Shamsuddin, who is the founder and president of the Malaysian Urban Design Association, PEREKABANDAR. PEREKABANDAR is a registered NGO championing good urban design practices. Dr. Shuhana, it's good to have you back on the show with me. Let's talk about the Urban Renewal Bill. The government says that it's going to revitalize urban spaces. It's going to address deteriorating buildings. From an urban design perspective, how do you assess the necessity of having the Urban Renewal Act?
Thank you, Melisa, for having me again. When we at PEREKABANDAR first heard about this Urban Renewal Act, we were quite excited because it's about time that we take some actions on the decaying inner city areas and the areas that have turned into squalors and slums, which is not just going to affect the image of the city, the identity. At the same time, it's giving a very poor quality of life to the people. As a result of many of these areas that will be subjected to urban renewal are areas that have been in existence for a long time. Some of their infrastructure and utilities have seen the light of days and need to be improved or replaced to meet for modern needs. But the problem is that when the bill was released to the public, it has not yet gone to the parliament. We were quite surprised looking at the act that the act, which is supposed to be focusing on urban renewal as a social reform to improve the quality of life of the inner city communities as well as the quality of the environment, towards making an inclusive city where we could have all groups of the society, could belong in the inner city, and not to have the act as a means to justify gentrification. Because I think the gentrification issues is the one that is actually leading to this public outcry and all this social unrest about, then the certain groups will be marginalized, and it goes into a very political situation, which is not really very healthy. Because in the first place, urban renewal is not something new, and it has been done successfully in other developed countries. It so happened that 15 years ago, when I was still in the academia, I had a research grant given to me by MOSTI to do a research on urban regeneration. But we focuses on the historic waterfront areas, because in Malaysia, most cities are waterfront cities based by the waterfront. And as a result of the land-based transportation, many of the cities are backing the rivers. And one good example is Kuala Lumpur, where the cities become used for sewerage and utility lines and causing pollution and so forth. So when we did that research on it, I benchmarked Malaysia with United Kingdom and USA, and into how they conduct their urban renewal and regeneration program. And I've seen some good examples, some best practices over there. And what I gathered from the research over there is that the focus of urban renewal is not so much as to displace the community, but actually to give a better quality environment to them. So these communities that are affected, will be relocated temporarily elsewhere, and then their living environment will be improved. Of course, definitely there will be new development to justify the economic aspects of development, but not totally displacing the original community.
Right. Okay. So, Dr. Shuhana, I take your point that, urban renewal, when done well, will improve the quality of life for urban dwellers, but when done poorly, will lead to gentrification and displacement. How do we ensure that urban renewal projects don't just serve the interests of high-end property developers?
Well, if you look at the way it's been done in UK and even in the US, the focus is not just about the condition of the buildings or the age of the buildings, like what we are doing here in this act. That's why I was surprised. When I look at I'm not a lawyer, but I'm familiar with the Planning Acts and so forth, and I look at the Urban Regeneration Act in UK. They're not emphasizing on the building age or the developers. It's more on the mechanism or the agenda of how to bring better quality housing stocks into the inner city, how to improve the environment, and also increasing the amenities in the city for leisure and recreation. So we're not just talking about buildings, housing and so forth. There are other things that are needed to be improved, like playing fields or playgrounds and so forth for inner city communities. If you want people to live in the cities, it's not just about giving them housing. They have to have families. With families, they have to have schools. They have to have other community needs and so forth. So, urban renewal program over there is looking at in total, not just from the aspect of there are so many buildings are decaying. There are so many buildings are failing. So if you take the analogy of a computer, the hardware is the keyboards, the motherboards, and so forth. But what makes a computer useful to us is the software, isn't it? The program. Now, that's the same with the cities. The buildings and so are the hardware, but the software are the people. They are the one that make the cities alive. They are the one that gives that identity and character to the city. Without people, the city will be a ghost town. It will not be, even though if you build very, very sophisticated building and so forth, without people, there's no life to it.
Right.
So I think this bill, is started on the wrong footings. It's emphasizing too much on the consent threshold. It's just focusing on the age of the buildings. And if you look at the act thoroughly, they just the decision to decide whether the area will be going under urban renewal program is going to be decided by the engineers, who will just look at the, like I said, hardware, the physical conditions.
So what should they be looking at, if not just the age of the deteriorating buildings and what consent level or threshold level of consent that they require for that? What should they be looking at?
Yes, they one of it should be the age. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but cannot be the only deciding factor. You should also look at the social ethnic composition of the group, of the community who's living there. How much have they contributed to the character and the heritage of the places through their lifestyles and so forth? For all you know, if you replace them, the area will not be part of the heritage of the city anymore. And so apart from that's why the ethnic group, the social composition, the character of the place, sometimes the buildings is because if you look, in the act, their cutoff point is 30 years old, But sometimes if the building is 30 years old, if it is well maintained with good upkeep and so forth, it can last long, and it has a quality environment, contribute to the environment.
I do have a question about that. The Public Works Department said that buildings are only safe for to be occupied for 70 to 80 years. Is that typical? I mean,
the lifespan. Yes, lifespan is about that, 70, 80 years. But if you look at the act, 30 years already, you need to get how many percent?
Yes.
I mean, that means they started with 30 years. 30 years is still young.
Yes, 70% for 30 years. That's right.
Yeah, 70%. So, if the area is 30 years old, but the buildings are being kept well, and the community is a very close-knit community, because what happening now, we are facing something that has been faced by developed countries like UK 60, 70 years ago. They were facing the same situation post-war, when they have to rehabilitate the areas and redevelop certain areas that are affected by the war, and also as a result of the Industrial Revolution, some of the cities were built, just for the needs of the factories. But they made the same mistake as us by redevelopment, comprehensive redevelopment, where they bulldoze all the houses, displace the community, and build new houses. And after that, there was a lot of outcry because lots of social problems resulted as a result of the displacement, which is actually gentrification. Gentrification means you displace the community that originally inhabit the place and you bring in a new community with different income group, different social status, different lifestyle, different behavior pattern, and so forth, transforming not just physically the character of the place, but also the social environment in the place. So that's why urban renewal was introduced in UK in the 70s to become as a remedy to this comprehensive development, which is actually not popular among the public and also bring lots of social problems. So that's why in Malaysia, we now have been doing comprehensive developments of before this. And that's why I think this urban renewal is a good thing, because urban renewal does not mean total displacement, total redevelopment. It can also mean conservation. It can also mean adaptive reuse. It can also mean revitalization, just refurbishment, rehabilitate certain. So it's a mixture of different types of approaches. Not just demolish and build new. But if you look at the act, the impression is that, people, when they read it, I don't know whether it's being misread, but people were scared that, this means going to demolish, and then they're not going to have their homes anymore, and they're going to be living elsewhere and so forth. So that is I think that it started as the wrong footing. They're emphasizing on the wrong things, and also the other problem is that it looks like it's a developer driven kind of development. Whereas in UK or even in Singapore, the government agency will be the driver of the urban renewal program, and the developer will be the engine, the one who's going to pump in money, and there'll be a joint venture kind of program. But the decision making, where we are heading will be from the government agency, because should be a social reform. This should be to improve the livelihood of the people. Whereas developer will only interested in the dollar and cent that comes from the development. I'm sorry, I think this is the reality of the situation.
Dr. Shuhana, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Dr. Shuhana Shamsuddin, founder and president of PEREKABANDAR. We're going to take a quick break here and consider this. We'll be back with more on the topic of the Urban Renewal Act. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. Let's continue our discussion about the Urban Renewal Act, which will introduce lower approval thresholds for redevelopment in urban areas. But it's also raised concerns about transparency, fair compensation, and the risk of forced evictions. So who gets to decide what stays and what goes? And how do we ensure that urban renewal isn't just another vehicle for corporate profit at the expense of communities? Joining us now is Dr Ainul Jaria Maidin, who is a retired professor in Sustainable Law Development, Policy and Governance at IIUM's Ahmad Ibrahim Kulliyyah of Laws. She's also a director of the town planning consultancy Reka Rancang Sdn Bhd. Dr Ainul, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. From a legal standpoint, when we look at the Urban Renewal Act, is it a necessary intervention? I'm just wondering because could we instead look at reforming existing laws like the Strata Titles Act? Could that then achieve the same goal as opposed to creating a new Urban Renewal Act?
Thank you, Melisa. Thank you, AWANI, for inviting me to give my humble viewpoint on this. Okay, I've been teaching land acquisition law under the land law to my students since 1993. 1994, and then, the law that we have, there's a Land Acquisition Act, is sufficient, if you ask me, to enable the government to acquire land for redevelopment. Maybe the law needs to be tweaked here and there, just to add in the word redevelopment. This law was introduced in 1960 to enable the government to establish the relevant machinery to like an executive agency under the state government. Actually, land is a state matter, not federal government matter. Yeah. So the state government establishes this committee within their state authority, and this committee will do the job of receiving the proposal for acquisition. And this acquisition proposal can come from any government agencies. And I realize that it has been extended to enable private corporate agencies also to go for development. But they don't ask for the land, but the government will do the acquisition, and then the land is alienated, or the land is transferred to them, the private corporate agencies, to do the development. We have like places, new township development, yeah. So this has been going on well, no issues. And the law provides, the Land Acquisition Act provides for the adequate compensation. And maybe the adequate compensation part need to be amended. Then we have now the main problem, or the major problem that I see that the government is trying to tackle, is the strata termination. The strata termination. So strata termination, in if you look at the Strata Title Act 1985, it says unanimous resolution, unanimous consent for resolution, yeah, for termination. So unanimous consent for termination of strata subdivision. The building we call subdivided building. So this is where the problem is. So the government is of the view that, I'm sure they've done some study, that we need to amend this part to include certain threshold. Yeah, not a unanimous resolution, unanimous consent, but a threshold where they say, look at the age of the building. This is what is mentioned in the new law. Okay, this is the most important aspect that I see from the present law that need to be amended. And maybe the Town Country Planning Act 1976, it actually is already provided for development area. So the law is already there. The existing infrastructure, legal infrastructure, is sufficient.
Right.
But I
Okay.
think
So, Dr. Ainul, why do you think there is a new law being proposed? I mean, if the current laws are sufficient, or maybe needs a little bit of tweaking, what benefit, or what likelihood or reason could there be for introducing a new Urban Renewal Act?
Okay. The intention to introduce the new law, Urban Renewal Act, is noble. I mean, I support it. If the government is, as the Prime Minister said, we want to go on with this. We are not going to take a step back. Everyone is, in the government is keen for the law to be introduced. Fine. If the law is to be introduced, of course, we as Rakyat, we have no choice. By times, but we want the law to be drafted in a better way.
Okay.
I've gone through the draft Urban Renewal Bill. As it is to me, it is insufficient to regulate the urban redevelopment.
Okay.
Yeah, the clauses are
In what
insufficient.
ways?
Yeah.
In what ways?
Okay, we talk about establishing executive committee at the federal level and state level. Fine. The Act talks about establishing a body, but the body is to be given legal function, statutory body. It's very, very vague. And then the term developer is mentioned in the bill. I disagree with the term developer because to me, the redevelopment part, of course, the developer is going to be the major funder of the project, but then the developer should not be allowed to be negotiating with the land property owners. It is unfair. We should a government agency or a government linked company established to deal with this. Like previously, we had Urban Development Authority (UDA). So now we have Urban Redevelopment Authority. Fine, we can establish that authority with the government. So this is a statutory body which should be given the necessary powers, function, to deal with it. And then the Act talks about establishing a mediation committee. That's very good. I like the mediation committee because I'm a, champion of mediation. Mediation enables the both agencies, both I mean the the parties involved in a particular transaction to come together and achieve a win-win situation. But it stops there, mediation committee. But then what is the function of the committee? What are the types of disputes that's going to be brought to the committee? That's lacking.
Okay.
And one
Right.
more, the act never bring the court into the picture. The court, there must be a clause providing for the dispute resolution where the court is brought in. We have to go to court if there is a dispute, isn't it? For termination, yeah. Who is going to in Australia? The termination, the registrar of the land office gets the termination order from the court. When
Right.
yes, when there is no unanimous resolution or the consent threshold is not met, they go to the court. The management corporation brings the matter to court.
Can I ask you, so it's been raised that the law could be impinging or infringing on constitutional protections for property rights. If the Urban Renewal Bill is passed and it becomes an Urban Renewal Act, do you foresee legal battles from property owners challenging redevelopment projects? I mean, I'm just wondering, might there be potential court cases down the road because it could be seen as being against the Constitution?
Well, we have Article 13(1) of the Federal Constitution saying that no one shall be deprived of property. But then it did not stop there. It says save in accordance with the law. And the law that is available, made at present, is the Land Acquisition Act 1960. So the law is already there. Then Article 13(2) says adequate compensation. So when a property is taken away from us, adequate compensation is calculated and assessed based on the Schedule 1 of the Land Acquisition Act. That's the law that is there. But if you bring in the urban renewal, the new law, whatever that they want to bring in, it's like you're doing it. They seem to bringing in I mean, I feel that they're saying that this negotiation between land proprietors and the developers. But to me, that is not the right way, because the government is the custodian of our rights. Yeah, many ways the federal constitution is there. So to me, I believe that the statutory agency should be established, and the developer should not be given. It shouldn't be developer-led. It should be people-centric, because if the law can bring in social development, economic development, also reduce traffic congestion, livable environment, inclusivity, this is what we're looking at, sustainable development goals. The law is made to ensure that SDG is realized. We subscribe to SDG. We subscribe to Urban Development Agenda. All this we subscribe. Malaysia is very good at subscribing to international treaties and protocols. Yeah, we are very good. In fact, our new mayor for DBKL is Dato Sri Maimunah.
Yeah, so formerly from UN Habitat. Dr. Ainul, can I ask you, so one of the key issues that has come up from this, or the key narratives, has been that it reduces the consent threshold, even as low as 51%. How do we think about this? Does it in any way undermine property rights? Are there legal precedents for this controversial of removing or lowering the consent threshold?
Previously, like Razak mentioned, it was a success story, but it was negotiation. Yeah, it was well done. No law was there. You know, they didn't even go on the Land Action Act. They didn't even go. We didn't have the URA, but they were successful. But that's because the owners come together and they managed to come for redevelopment. It's all consensus. So if you want to go for this consensus-based, consensus-driven approach, then it's going to take time. It's going to be very time consuming, and you have few heads will agree, few heads will not agree, so there'll be a lot of battles. Of course the court will come in, people can go to court. Of course, it's a free country, we can bring our application to court, the affected landowner can go to court. We can see floodgates of litigation from landowners. Yeah, our Malaysians are very, very now we can see them like Save Kuala Lumpur. They bring matters to court and then they win. Yeah, so it's a good what do I say, a good precedent for other property owners. But if this law comes into picture, the law, if the government still wants to go on with the law needs to be amended. In fact, my team has offered to do pro bono work on this. If the government says that they didn't have enough sufficient fund to draft the law, they did it in-house. We understand that the law is not drafted by lawyers. It's drafted by a team of people. They are competent people. I'm not denying their competency, but we need to put in more information into the statute so that it becomes a better piece of law. As it is, if the government wants to go on with this bill, it needs to be amended. As it is, it cannot. There's many mistakes in there.
That was Dr Ainul Jaria Maidin from the town planning consultancy Reka Rancang Sungai Berhad. We're going to wrap up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.